This was in 2024. My parents had just moved to the West Coast, and I was on my way driving there to visit them. A lot of the way there's pretty empty with suddenly a few gas stations spread out. Down the long highway, at some point during my second night of driving, my check engine light came on in my car. I wasn't exactly surprised because my car was old and not very reliable, but I wasn't really a car person either, and I had no clue what could be going on with it. I looked up where the next gas station was. It was another 30 ms away, but I really had no choice but to make it there. However, my car decided to make the choice for mine instead. Though, as the engine suddenly cut out, leaving me coasting along the side of the road until I eventually stopped, I tried everything I could to get it working again. I even got out and looked under the hood for any possible causes of the problem, but I saw nothing. Honestly, I thought this was just the final leg of my car. In the meantime, all I could do was find a way to get help. I pulled my phone out and I immediately felt my stomach drop as I had no service. I tried a few calls anyway, but obviously none of them went through. After 30 minutes of trying to find a solution, I realized I really only had one option, which was to hitchhike a ride. I'd never done it before and I was kind of nervous, not really knowing what to expect. I always found it as a strange thing that I never thought I'd ever do. I stood out there on the side of the road and just waited. Every 15 or so minutes a single car would pass by, but none of them stopped for me. This went on for hours. It was probably 2 or 3 a.m. before I saw the headlights off another car coming down the road. I stuck my thumb out, assuming it would pass by like all the rest. But to my surprise, they started pulling over. It was a black pickup truck, and I couldn't really see the driver until I walked around to the side of their car. He was a very skinny man with a long, thin face and matched with his long black hair. It was a little unsettling need. A lift, he said happily. With a big grin, something really put me off about this guy. But honestly, I was tired, and this might be my only opportunity to get a ride. So I didn't pass it up. I hopped in the back seat. I felt like it would have been awkward if we didn't have some small talk. So I asked him what he was up to. Tonight, just cruising on the highway here. Sounded like it was a hobby of his, or something, which was kind of strange. Since we were in the middle of nowhere, I was surprised he didn't ask me what I was up to or why I needed a ride. But I tried to think of another question, just to keep the conversation going. The man interrupted my train of thought, though when he looked at me for a few seconds in the mirror. "You don't have any weapons on you, right?" "Just making sure I'm safe," he said. With again that odd smile of his, I said, "No," thinking it was a strange question to bluntly ask. But maybe he really was just trying to watch out for himself. I don't know. But after that I stopped talking. 10 more minutes went by as I just stared out the window. Before them made a sudden turn off the highway and onto a dirt road. I immediately sat up and looked around, realizing this was definitely not right. "Where are we going?" He shot a quick look at me, then continued to drive without answering. I asked him again, more loudly, as the fear was building up. "Where are you taking me at this point?" I knew that, no matter what, the next time this car stops, I was going to bolt. So I got ready with my hand on the door. As he drove down this beaten dirt road, suddenly a small farmhouse appeared in the dim lights. Its front door was wide open, and the whole place looked like it was decaying and falling in on itself. Once we got up closer, he suddenly slammed on the brakes. I jolted forward into the seat, and the man instantly swung his door open and ran around to the side door. I swung mine open as well and sprinted out, heading right for the tree line. The man ran around the car and came running up behind me, but once we were in the woods, it was so dark that I could only hear his footsteps and could no longer see him, even though he was just 10 or 15 feet behind me. I took a sharp turn, getting behind a tree and holding my breath. His footsteps came right up, past me, continued further into the woods. A whole minute passed before heard his creepy voice call out for me. Over and over, he'd repeat the same lines in the same tone of voice. "Come on, let's go back. I'll give you a ride." I wasn't trying to scare you. It was extremely disturbing, even worse. I never heard his footsteps go back toward the car, so I'd no idea where he was, or if he was lurking in the dark somewhere nearby. I knew I had to leave though, so I started quietly walking in the direction of the main road, or at least what I thought was that direction. I really couldn't see anything, but once I was deeper in the woods, I pulled my phone out and turned the brightness on. Lo, somehow I happened to have service. Now, I almost wanted to cry from the relief. I dialed 911 and had them track the call, so they knew where I was. Thankfully, I made it back to the main road and met 2 officers thereby. That time, the man in the car were somehow gone. I don't know how he managed to get out of there without being seen. As for the farmhouse, it was just what it looked like. Some old abandoned place, which makes it even stranger that the man knew exactly where it was and turned into it on purpose. I have no idea what he was going to do. I'm just glad I didn't have to find out. When I was 19, I went to a college 2 hours north of my hometown. Maybe once every month or so, I would head back home for the weekend to stay with my family. And while I was there, it wasn't unusual for me to go on a late-night run before. I would shower and go to bed on this particular weekend. I'd actually remembered to bring my running shoes, something I would often forget to take home. I looked at the clock, realized it was a little before midnight, and figured I could fit in a couple miles or so before settling down for the night now. Something that needs to be mentioned is my family lived in the middle of nowhere, where we had a nice house. Just almost all around the area was covered in endless cornfields and dirt road. So honestly, I can't even remember where our nearest neighbor was, which should give you an idea of how remote it actually was. Anyway, I began my run on the usual dirt roads surrounded on both sides by cornfields. Looking back, it was actually a pretty creepy setting, especially considering the time of night, though I usually take some earbuds to listen to music, which usually gets me in a different headspace and causes me to forget all about it. I was running for maybe 10 minutes when the sound of a car coming up on the road behind me overcame the music from my earbuds. It startled me at first, as I didn't think any cars would be out this late, especially this deep into the middle of nowhere, though I simply got over to the side of the road, thinking the car would pass. But no, for whatever reason, this random vehicle stayed behind me, just following me as I ran. I didn't know what kind of vehicle it was, as each time I looked behind me, all I could see was the blinding light from the headlights. At this point, I was a little on edge, as there was clearly enough space to pass. I decided to just stay calm and continue on my run. I'm a pretty big dude, and I was confident if it came to it, I could handle whoever was driving the vehicle. About a couple Minutes later, and the driver of the vehicle steps on it, so as to now be side by side to me. I now noticed the vehicle was a very old white van. The driver's side window then rolled down and I stopped in response. I could see what this person wanted. But as the window rolled down, I quickly realized how dark it was. Inside, like so much. So that all I could see was the driver's black hoodie, not even his face. "Hey man, do you want to read it's raining pretty hard outside now." But the weird thing was that it was not even enough to be considered a drizzle. I held back my response for a second, as I could now clearly hear, shuffling around in the back of the van, it's safe to say the situation wasn't sitting well with me. And so I responded to the guy thanking him, but overall declining his request. I turned around to continue running. And luckily the van now sped past me, down the road and into the darkness. I thought that would be the end of it. But of course it wasn't. Not even 5 minutes passed since the encounter when I could see the van in front of me stopped in the middle of the road, but not like on the side, rather it was sideways so as to block the whole road. As I got closer, I could make out a few people, maybe 3 or 4, wearing all black walking. Near the van, I figured whatever was happening, I didn't want any part of and decided to just head back home the way I came. Instead of completing my usual loop, but my absolute horror, as I turned around, I could see another pair of headlights gaining on me. I didn't know if it had anything to do with the van, but considering the area I was in the time of night, there was a good chance it did. Honestly, I felt trapped. I was frozen like a deer in headlights. But that was short-lived, as I could now hear multiple footsteps running on the road behind me. That's when I realized the men near Thieven were now charging full speed directly towards me. I had no choice but to ditch the road and run in some random direction in the middle of the cornfield. I ran for a good 10 minutes, and for a good chunk of that, I swear I could hear footsteps behind me. But I was completely alone at this point. Luckily, my phone didn't fall out of my pocket while I was running, and I was able to track down where I was and how to get home. Now, considering I was in the middle of a cornfield, it took me about 45 minutes, though I never saw anything the rest of the night. This will most likely forever be the most disturbing thing I'll experience to this day. I don't know what the intentions of those people were or even who they were, though the fact that they trapped me and started full-on sprinting towards me, at least to me, confirmed my suspicion that they did not have good intentions. I would file a police report that night, but I haven't heard or seen anything since. Sightings. I was driving back from my friend's place in Wisconsin. I live right outside of Chicago, which is about a 6-hour drive. So I decided to do it all in one go. However, I didn't anticipate leaving. So late, I wasn't on the road until 8 p.m. But I absolutely had Toby home for work the following day. So there was no option to hang out any longer. If you aren't familiar with Wisconsin, it's mostly flat with a ton of forests all over the northern parts, and small towns scattered throughout. The biggest cities are closer to the border, nowhere near where I was, and my buddy's place was in one of these small towns. So pretty much right out of the gate it was barren forest roads. There were a few cars here and there, but once I was 30 minutes out and the sun had set, there wasn't a single other car. I probably went a whole 2 hours without seeing Anyone else on the road, the endless flat forest on either side of me was so repetitive that it was making me sleepy. It definitely didn't help that I was so tired from hanging with my friend all weekend either. I was trying everything to stay awake, but at just around 11 p.m., I actually saw something up. The road. I opened my eyes a bit wider and could tell it was a person. They were standing on the shoulder and had their thumb out, clearly looking for a ride for some reason. The very first thought that came through my mind was that having company in the car would surely help keep me awake. I almost instinctively began slowing down, and as I got closer, they started walking down the shoulder toward my car. I rolled the window down and pulled up next to them. Hey, I just need a ride into the next town. If you've got a spare seat for me. It was really dark out and I couldn't see much of him, but he sounded tired. I let him into the back seat. It wasn't until I started pulling away that the thought even popped into my head about why he was out here. I mean, the middle of the woods in the middle of the night was kind of a weird place to be. I looked in the mirror. The guy was looking at me through the shadow that covered the back seat. He looked like he was 30-ish with stubble and a buzz cut, but I didn't see a backpack or anything. With him, so what brought you out here, hesked me. I told him I was at my friend's place the weekend and was heading back home to Chicago. Then I asked him the same question. His straight face turned into a fake smile. Oh, I was just walking on a trail in the woods and got lost along the way, found the road and figured it best to catch a ride. I thought about his answer for a second. I didn't know about any trails or really anything at all in these parts of the woods, but even if there was, he would have had to drive to get here. Why didn't he mention that wouldn't want me to take him to the trail? Head instead of into town? I don't know. I was more awake and aware now, and it was making me uneasy the more I thought about it. But then the guy suddenly told me to stop. He told me to pull over and drop him off here. I cautiously did as he said, pulling the car onto the shoulder and parking. We were maybe 5 miles down the road from where I picked him up, and there was still nothing but dense forest all around. The guy quickly opened the door, and without saying anything, he started rushing away, heading for the trees. I was super weirded out and concerned about this whole thing. And at this point, I just wanted to get out of there, but he left the door open, and when I leaned into the back seat to shut it, I noticed a drawing bag tucked under the passenger's seat. It wasn't mine, it was definitely his. I called out for the guy, and he turned around. Hey, you left your bag. He stood with a straight face and wide, frustrated eyes staring at me for several uncomfortable seconds. Then he came back. Your bag, you left it right. Here. I pointed under the seat and hesitated for another several seconds before grabbing it abruptly and turning around. Hurrying back into the forest, I reached over and shut the door, then left the area as fast as I could. I was relieved to be away from that guy, knowing that something was definitely up with him. But it was only a few minutes down the road that I started to pick up on an awful odor from the back seat. It got increasingly worse over the next 30 minutes until I got into another small town. I stopped at a gas station and used my phone light to look into the back seat on the carpet under the passenger seat right where the drawstring bag had been sitting. There was a deep red stain. I almost threw up as I ran into the gas station and called the police. He gave them all the info I had on what happened, and they cut out the piece of carpet from my car to get tested. They also did a search for the man but came up empty-handed, only finding a few footprints near the spot I picked them at. I don't know exactly what was in that bag, but it seems like he was trying to plant it in my car as a means to cover something up. We still have no idea who he was or what he was up to that night for.